Hey guys, so this is the ultimate guide for picking a road bike. This is more of a beginner's course guide. So if you're a beginner, you want to get into cycling, you want to buy a bike, this guide's for you. So let's just jump right into it. How do you pick the right bike for you? So the first thing is it needs to look really good, right? Well, that's important. So you want to buy a bike that you feel comfortable on, that you like riding it. But the most important thing is your position, so the sizing of the bike, the handlebar width, and so on. First thing that you need to know is if you're buying an aero bike, if you're buying an endurance bike, if you're buying a lightweight bike, it usually depends on where you live. What I would recommend to you is try to picture it in your head where you're going to ride, if it's more flat, if you like riding climbs, and try to find the bike that suits that need. Like most of you will probably say, yeah, I will ride it everywhere. Sure, you can ride an aero bike everywhere, you can ride the lightweight bike anywhere. If you want to have a specific bike for a specific niche, then yeah, I would recommend just think about it first, and maybe if you have just one short climb on your usual route, if it's a longer ride, maybe you can go for an endurance bike, especially if you want more an upright position, if you don't want to be like really bent over the handlebars. So yeah, those are just some to think about before you even go into the shop. Once you're in a shop or a local store, or you're buying a bike through a web shop, so then if you're in a local store, try to find a couple of ones and just go inside, ask, do some digging before you go into the shop, and then when you go to the shop, just tell them what you like and see how they react. If you like the salesman, I think that's the shop for you, and yeah, from that point on you kind of need to trust the salesman, and yeah, hopefully you stay in your budget. There are a couple of different types of bikes, like we mentioned. First is the aero bike. So they're usually a little bit stiffer, and because they usually have higher wheels, they appeal to most cyclists. That's the version of the bikes that a lot of especially new cyclists like to buy. Then you have the lightweight version. So those bikes are a little bit lighter. They have a shallower depth of wheels. And then you have the endurance version, which is usually more compared to the lightweight bike. The difference is they usually have something that absorbs the bumps a little bit better. The R&D, so the design of the bike, is a little bit specifically made for those absorptions. It's more comfortable, especially on longer rides, depending on terrain. It absorbs the bumps from the road a lot better than, let's say, a lightweight bike or an aero bike. Then you have like 4 different types of materials. Most of the companies now, they usually use carbon fiber, so that is I think, in my opinion, the best one, because you can mold it the way you want. You can have a stiffer, let's say, front end, and maybe it can flex a little bit better at the seat stays. So yeah, that's one thing. Then you have aluminum, steel, and also titanium frames. Depending on your budget, you will probably, if you're a beginner, you will probably go for either an aluminum frame, or you will go for the carbon fiber frame. So when you're in the shop, or you're trying to find the best bike online, if it's the first bike that you're buying, it will be really hard to find it online unless the salesperson is really educated and he knows what he's doing. But mostly you will probably need some adjusting when you get the bike. We would prefer to have all the customers just do a bike fit send us the spreadsheet. When you make the bike fit, you usually know what kind of stem length do you need, seat position, crank length. Maybe you can tweak it a little bit when you get the bike, but it's a better option for you guys if you make the bike fit first and then go and buy the bike. That also depends on what kind of bike fitter it's in your area, because you can, unfortunately, the bike fits cannot be done through Zoom call or a Google meetup. So yeah, that's one thing. But yeah, do a bike fit first and then you go to the cycling shop. That's just our opinion. You can do whatever you want. If you're going to buy a bike through a web shop and that's your first bike, try to find the size chart. If you're in between sizes and you're a beginner, I would suggest maybe go for a bigger size depending on your upper body length compared to your leg. If you're, let's say, a normal size, then I would go for a bigger size because it will feel a little bit more comfortable, at least at the beginning. Then you can maybe buy a different bike in a couple of years once you know that the position suits you and everything's okay. If you're younger, you can go for a smaller size as well, but usually if you're between sizes and a beginner, I would recommend going for a bigger size compared to the smaller, unless you have, let's say, for example, really short legs, then I would opt for the smaller one. In your case, how do you choose the perfect wheels for you? So the first thing that we need to know is how much do we weigh. So if you're a bit heavier, then look for the specification of the wheels, because most of the wheels have a weight limit on them. So that's one thing. If you buy like a really lightweight wheel and it will bend too much beneath your power, the wheel won't feel great, even though it's the best wheel around. But if it bends too much, you're stronger than somebody that weighs maybe 55 kilo or 60, the bike won't feel good. Also, the depth of the wheels, it just depends where you guys are riding. So if you guys are riding where there's a lot of climbs, you pretty much just go uphill or downhill, I would recommend a shallower wheel. But if you're, let's say, I don't know, in Miami and there's just like straight roads, or maybe in Dubai, yeah, I would just recommend go for deeper section wheels. Regarding what kind of wheels you guys are buying, it's really also important the tire size. So now for 2023 and on, most of the teams will be using 28 millimeters tires or 30 millimeter tires. Look for the bikes to also have at least 30 millimeters frame clearance, because you can maybe find the best wheels, or you want to buy a new wheel and its recommended use is 28 or 30 millimeters tires and your frame doesn't support that. So just look for that as well when you're buying a new set of wheels. Regarding the wheels, you have a couple of options. So you can go for clinchers, you can go for tubeless tires, tubeless wheels, and then you can go for tubular tires. There's a big shift in the cycling community because most of us started using tubeless tires and pretty much all of us like it. So yeah, we went from tubulars. Also the pros are using a lot of tubeless tires. So yeah, I guess the shift is going into tubeless range. What's the difference? Clincher tires have an inner tube inside. With tubeless tires, you need to have a specific kind of rim, and if you don't, you can buy something that will transform your normal rim into a tubeless ready rim. Tubular wheels, where you need to glue the tire onto the wheel. So the tubulars are probably the safest, the lightest, and the most expensive ones. But the problem is because it takes a lot of time for you to service your bike. If there's a puncture, yeah, it's a big hassle. So that's why a lot of companies are shifting to a different position, so more into the tubeless tires. You have a milk inside, so if you get a smaller puncture or stuff like that, that sealant will easily fix the hole. So you can ride to your home pretty much, yeah, even though you had a puncture. So it happened to me this year probably like 4 or 5 times already, and yeah, I still have the same tire on the bike, and yeah, it works. I'm really happy with the tubeless tires. They're faster as well as especially at the higher speed, and they're more comfortable because you can put less air inside the tire. For me, it's a really great option, and I would recommend it, even though 2 years ago, if somebody would ask me that, I wouldn't recommend it. But now, yeah, every year the step up in tires and the wheels, it's really huge. How to choose the correct pedal for you? The first thing, there are a couple of different systems. So you have the Shimano system, you have the Look system, then you have Speed Place, you have Time, and also some others. For the first 20 years or maybe 30 years now, I rode mostly Shimanos and Look pedals, but I switched to Speed Place last year. And once I got back into when I changed the bike just for one day, I put Looks on it, and yeah, it just didn't feel the same, so I switched back to Speed Place. And yeah, for me, because I have some knee issues, the best option for me are the Speed Place. They're easily adjustable, they're really light. The cons are they're expensive. Yeah, so you choose whatever you prefer, but I'm really an advocate for speed play pedals or Wahoo speed play pedals. You guys can choose whatever you like. Shimano's and Lux, all of the companies are really good, so just choose whatever you prefer. How to find the perfect saddle for you? That's a really hard one, because even if you measure it, maybe that seat won't suit you the best, because it also depends on if this is too wide for you, and you have bulkier thighs, this could bother you. So in my opinion, just measure your seat bones. You can do it at home. Just use like a clean piece of paper, soak a sponge or something, and put it beneath the paper. Sit on it. You need to have a different angle, and yeah, that's pretty much it. You will see where the wet spots are, and then you just measure the center to center at 2 centimeters, and you will get the perfect width of the saddle. And then you need to know, yeah, if you want it with the hole inside the saddle, or what's the width at the tip of the nose. Then that's just trial and error, and you will see over time. Now usually most of the better companies have a test saddle, so you can test it as well. That's the way you will find the perfect saddle for you. That's the easiest way, but unfortunately with saddles, if you find it right away, you're golden. But most of us were looking for it for a long time, so don't be afraid if you need to try like 5 to 10 saddles before you find the perfect one. We're at the gear ratio. So with the gear ratio, if you're a beginner, just go for 50-34 in the front, and in the back just go for the sprocket that's 11 to 32 teeth or 34. Just go for the easiest one, and that's pretty much it. You can still ride it at 60 kilometers per hour. Don't try to go for something that's tougher gear ratio. It won't do you no good, especially at the beginning. When you start riding a lot, then you can switch to gear ratio that you think suits you better. Unless if you're, I don't know, like we mentioned earlier, in Dubai, where you know there's just like straight roads, and you ride with guys that usually go, I don't know, 50 kilometers per hour, yeah, then you can go for a higher ratio or a little bit harder ratio. But if you live anywhere else that you have some climbs and stuff, and you're a beginner, yeah, just go for the 50-34 and 11-32 in the back, or 11-34 in the back. How much should the road bike weigh? It just depends. If you're buying like an entry-level bike, they usually weigh for around 9 kilos, 9 to 10 kilos. If you're buying an aero bike, also depends on which range. They weigh from a little bit higher, from 7 kilo to all the way 8 and a half, 9. And if you're buying a lightweight bike, they weigh from below 4 kilos and up to 7 kilos, in my opinion, for a lightweight bike. How much does a road bike cost? Entry-level bikes cost around 1,000 euro. It will get you from A to point B. But if you're buying a little bit better bike, so that those are around 3,000 euro. Higher level bikes are around 8,000 euro, something like that. So the upper limit is unlimited. We need to ask ourselves if we want to buy a rim brake version or disc brake version. The way the industry is going, I won't even go into talking about rim brake bikes because they're just outdated at the moment. Nobody's riding them, or at least the pro teams are all switching to disc brakes, which means the industry switching to disc brakes. So if you're buying a rim brake version in 2023, the problem is there won't be any spare parts left in the future, and so on. So for me, I think the best option is to go for this brake version. I'm not saying like I would ride the rim brake version bike without any issues. I think even with the descending, I think they were smoother to descend, because with these brakes the modulation is not as clear or as easy as some people say. I would rather ride a rim brake version than a disc brake version bike, but the way everything is going, I think the safest option is just go for the disc brake version, because everything will be better in a couple of years. And if you want to change the wheels, stuff like that, probably a couple of companies that are doing the rim brake version wheels for 2023, they won't be doing it anymore for 2024. And also some companies that even manufacture their high-end bikes with rim brakes. So everything's going to disc brakes. Don't be a fool, buy a disc brake bike. Then we have some important things to discuss, is also the handlebar width. Usually we just measure the bones that we have, and that should be your size of the handlebars. My width is 46 and I use 40 centimeters handlebars. I just like it that way. For women, especially if your shoulders are a little bit narrower, don't go like for a 46 center to center handlebar or 44. That's just you will look like this on a bike. So that's one thing. Try to buy a bike that has at least seat post, that it looks good, that it's not fully into the frame, especially if you buy the right kind of size for you. Let's say the aesthetics of the bikes do matter, so just look for that it's depends on the frame as well, but it just looks better. If you're doing a bike fitting, then they will also tell you how to position your levers. So that's one thing. If the levers are too in, let's say they are this angle isn't straight, it's maybe you have a dent here and you have some back problems, maybe that's the issue. Just put the levers a little bit higher, and in a lot of cases you will save that, you will manage that issue. And that's pretty much it regarding what do you guys need to know when you're buying a bike. Cheers.